I once worked 18 straight days as a nurse, and I remember when I first received that deposit in my bank account, I had received over $11,000, and that was for the 14 out of the 18 days that I had worked. The gross pay for that pay period was close to $16,000, and it was the most amount of money that I had ever received in a 2-week pay period. And the reason why I had been working so much, and so was Monica at the time, is because we had amassed about $122,000 worth of debt that we wanted to pay off. But when I look at it today, I look at the number of nurses that are doing overtime, and I realize the truth. Like, overtime culture isn't making nurses rich. It's actually keeping a lot of nurses poor. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about the toxic overtime culture that nurses praise and talk about constantly as if it's a good thing. I made a video when I first started this YouTube channel talking about how I've worked with a nurse who made over $800,000 per year for at least 3 years in a row. And you guys can go way back into my channel's history and look at that video. This nurse at the time was making about $110 an hour. I want you to multiply 110 times 12. She was hired to work 12-hour shifts, but every single day for 3 straight years, she was coming in for 16 hours a day. Now, think about that for a second. Let's say you're making $110 an hour and you multiply that by 12. After the 12th hour in California, you're going to get paid double time. So 110 times 2 is 220. Multiply that by 4 and add that to the 12 hours you already calculated. Multiply that number by 365, because that's the amount of money that she was making every single year for 3 years in a row. She did not take a single day off for 3 years in a row. And a lot of people ask me, how is it possible for somebody to do that? Well, it's possible when this nurse was able to do that because she was not doing patient care. And I'm not gonna mention which hospital it was in, but it was a hospital in Northern California. Now, I want you guys to think about this for a second. You're working 16 hours a day, 365 days of the year. What kind of life are you living when you're working that much? What are you doing with your money? Because I also know a nurse who made $550,000 2 years ago. Okay, $550,000 as a nurse. And when I asked this nurse where her money had gone, she had absolutely no idea. How is it that you work so often and so hard every single day, you make over $500,000 and you have no idea where your money went? You know, a lot of nurses, what they do these days is work and work and work till they burn themselves out. Nurses these days plan their lifestyle around the overtime that they work. And when they pick up shifts, they're thinking about the designer bags that they want to buy, the leased car that they want to get, or a big trip that they want to take. Many nurses that I know, especially here in California, are spending a lot of their money on renovations of a house. And then they end up selling the house a few years later with very little return. As opposed to a nurse who chooses to work overtime, but instead of trading their time for money, what they do is start using that income to invest in their 401k, to invest in a Roth IRA, or to invest in an index fund or the stock market, or to invest in real estate. If there is a nurse who's working overtime to pay off debt, I commend you. That is what you should be working overtime for, not to go into more debt. I remember this quote from an author and an inspirational speaker. His name is Myron Golden. You need to look him up. But in one of his speeches, I remember him asking the crowd, if someone were to give you $1 million today with no strings attached, would you take that money? And everybody in the audience raised their hands. Everybody said they would. Now, let's tie that to something else. If somebody said that they were gonna give you $1 million today, but today was going to be the last day of your life, if you took that $1 million, would you take it? Nobody raised their hands. Because at the end of the day, your time is more valuable than your money. And that's why Monica and I had a goal in mind when we were picking up all these hours way back when. The reason we were doing that is because we had a goal to get out of debt, pay everything off. So today, the only thing that we do owe is the mortgage in our home. but we are completely debt-free today. We work average of 20 hours a week for me, and Monica this year has averaged about 20 to 21 hours a week. We work less than most nurses do, and we're still able to earn enough money to go on multiple trips. We've increased our net worth from the days when we were working all that overtime where our net worth was in the negatives. I'm talking about like negative 200,000 at the time. Because if you think about the $122,000 of debt that we paid off, our net worth was like negative 200,000 back then. And that's not something that we would have been able to do if we would not have had that mentality that overtime had an end goal in sight. And the end goal for us was to pay off all of our debts and stop working ourselves to the bone. Because let me tell you, working all of that overtime takes a toll on your body, your mental health, your relationships. It takes a toll on everything outside and inside of work. Hey, next time you go to work, I want you to take a look around you and take a look at the nurses that work fewer hours and compare that to the nurses that work non-stop hours. And you're going to see that the ones who don't stop working are the ones that are going to be the most miserable nurses. And let me just speak from personal experience why I felt miserable when I was doing all this overtime. Every time that I would come into work, I would think about how much less time I had to spend with my family, how much less time I had to spend the money that I was earning. Monica and I had a car payment at the time that was $1,270. $1,270. And this is before interest rates were as high as they are today. And then we also had a personal loan that we took out just to pay the down payment on our house, a $70,000 loan. That loan had a payment of $1,435 a month. Just those two loans alone were close to $3,000 a month. Now, if you're making, let's say, $11,000 a month as a nurse here in Northern California, and you have $3,000 that goes towards a personal loan and a car note, and then in addition to that, you have a house payment that's $4,500 a month, you are already paying $7,500 a month before you even consider groceries, student loans, utility bills, and you consider any other additional things that you need to spend money on, like childcare. You're working all of these hours and you have no money left over. That's why your goal for working all that overtime should be to pay off all of your debt first. Imagine if we would have came here to California and we picked up all of those hours but had no debt to begin with, and just used all of that income and invested it wisely, today our net worth would likely have been over $2 million instead of $800,000. But we weren't smart about it initially. We thought we would come to California and be able to live lavishly. That's why we took out a $70,000 loan. We made a lot of stupid mistakes. We bought a $70,000 car. There was a lot of stupid mistakes that we made. Overtime is not evil, but you need to use it wisely. Nurses aren't doing this. They're doing it wrong. And this is part of the reason why I started creating all those spreadsheets way back when I started this YouTube channel. I wanted to show nurses that it was possible for them to make more money in different parts of the country and at the same time have a lower cost of living. That should be your goal, to decrease your cost of living, because you don't want to move to a location to make more money, but also increase your living expenses. So when you work that overtime, the next day that you work that overtime, you need to think about how you can make that money work for you so you don't have to constantly chase after it. Especially nowadays, when you see nurses across the country that are actually losing their jobs. Okay, there are nurses now that are actually being laid off. This is not something that used to happen before, and it's going to happen more, especially when you consider the costs of Medicaid that are happening. Close to $1 billion in Medicaid cuts when a lot of hospitals rely on Medicaid funding. So if you're working overtime right now, I want you to actually tell me in the comments, what are you using your overtime for? If you're using your overtime to continue living as if that money is never going to evaporate, you need to make better choices. If, on the other hand, you're working that overtime because you want to live a life where you are not constantly chasing that money, let me know in the comment section. And if you guys want me to make more videos like this, please let me know. Tell me what topics you want me to discuss, and If you want to be able to compare your salary to salaries in over 1,000 cities and the cost of living in those cities, then please download our app, Map My Pay. The link is going to be in the description of this video, and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and watch this next video.